Why do you tell a stranger on a plane things you've never told your best friend? Not small talk, not weather, the real thing. The divorce you haven't mentioned at work, the diagnosis you're still processing, the fear you can't say out loud to anyone who actually knows you. You'll probably never see this person again. And somehow, that's exactly why the words come out so easily. This isn't a coincidence, and it isn't really about the stranger at all. There's a specific mechanism behind it, and once you see it, you'll notice it happening in places you never expected. Start with the obvious explanation, the one you probably already told yourself. You assume it's because strangers are easier to talk to. Less judgment, less history, a blank slate you can write on without consequence. That explanation isn't wrong exactly, but it's incomplete in a way that hides the actual mechanism doing the work. In 1975, psychologist Zick Rubin ran a study that gave this phenomenon its name, the strangers on a train effect. Rubin found that people consistently disclose more personal, more vulnerable information to someone they've just met and will likely never see again than the people who are close to them and permanently part of their life. Rubin didn't just observe this casually. He measured it directly, comparing how much personal information people volunteered to a stranger they believed they'd never encounter again, versus a stranger they expected to interact with repeatedly. The gap wasn't small. The moment participants believed there might be future consequences, even mild ones, the depth of what they were willing to share dropped sharply. It wasn't the stranger's kindness pulling the honesty out of them. It was the expiration date. Translate that into your own experience. That conversation with the person next to you at a wedding reception, the one where you ended up talking about your parents' marriage falling apart, that wasn't a fluke. Your brain calculated without you consciously deciding anything that this person carried zero social risk. No shared friend group. No memory that persists past this flight, this bus ride, this bar. Here's the part that should feel uncomfortable. The people closest to you carry the highest cost of disclosure, not the lowest. Every person who knows your coworkers, your family, your history is a person who could theoretically repeat what you say, judge it against everything else they know about you, or simply remember it forever. A stranger has none of that leverage. So your nervous system treats them as safer, even though they're the one person who actually knows nothing about you. Does that mean closeness makes honesty harder? Not exactly. It means something more specific. In the 1990s, psychologist Arthur Aaron ran a study that gets referenced constantly today, usually stripped of its actual finding. Aaron's research produced what's now called the Fast Friends procedure, a structured set of increasingly personal questions that, when exchanged between two strangers, could manufacture a sense of closeness in under an hour that would normally take months to build. The critical detail people skip past is this: it wasn't time that built the closeness. It was reciprocal vulnerability under low social risk. Two strangers each with nothing to lose taking turns being honest. Strip away the stakes, and honesty stops feeling dangerous. Feel the weight of that for a second. You've probably assumed that real intimacy requires time history proof that someone has earned your trust. Aaron's data says otherwise. It says intimacy is a mechanism you can trigger deliberately in a single sitting with someone whose name you didn't know an hour ago. Time was never actually the ingredient. Low stakes was. There's a specific detail in Aaron's design that gets lost every time this study goes viral online. The questions in the Fast Friends procedure don't start personal. They start almost trivial. A hypothetical dinner guest, a recent phone call you wish you'd made differently, and only escalate toward real vulnerability once each small exchange has already gone unpunished. Nobody laughed. Nobody judged. Nobody used it against the other person. By the time the questions turn toward real fears or real regrets, the two strangers have already run a dozen small experiments proving it safe to continue. Closeness wasn't handed to them. It was earned in minutes, one low-risk disclosure at a time, stacking evidence that this particular exchange wouldn't cost them anything. Now here's where this stops being about airplanes and wedding receptions entirely. In 2004, psychologist John Suler documented something he called the online disinhibition effect. Suler was studying why people say things online to strangers in comment sections, in DMs, in forums that they would never say out loud to someone standing in front of them. His explanation lines up almost exactly with Rubin's decades-old finding, just wearing a different costume. Anonymity, invisibility, the absence of consequence. A username with no face attached to it functions exactly like a stranger on a train, except now that stranger is available to you at 2 in the morning every night, infinitely. Picture the specific moment this actually happens to you. You're lying in bed, the room dark, except for the cold blue light of your phone screen against the ceiling thumb, hovering over a reply to someone whose real name you don't even know. And the words come out faster and more honest than anything you've said to a person in your own house that day. That's not you being reckless. That's the exact same mechanism Rubin found on a train in 1975, now running at scale, available to you constantly, with none of the natural limits that used to come from an airplane eventually landing. Here's the twist almost nobody sees coming, because it flips the entire premise upside down. You'd assume the solution is to overshare less, to guard yourself more carefully with strangers the way you already do with people who matter. But the research points somewhere else entirely. The problem was never that you share too much with strangers. The problem is that you share too little with the people who actually stay. Rubin's own follow-up work found something quietly devastating. The ease of disclosure to strangers isn't a flaw in your character. It's a working demonstration that you're fully capable of honesty. You just reserve it for situations where you've calculated the risk down to zero. The skill was never missing. It was just being spent somewhere it couldn't build anything. Aaron's fast friends procedure proves the second half of this. If manufactured vulnerability between strangers can build real closeness in under an hour, the same structure applied deliberately to someone already in your life should theoretically work even faster because the foundation is already there. The reason it doesn't happen naturally isn't a lack of love. It's a lack of low-stakes moments where honesty feels safe enough to attempt. So the honesty you give a stranger on a plane isn't wasted, but it is misallocated. You're proving again and again that you have the capacity for real disclosure. You're just proving it to people who will land at a different gate and disappear from your life within the hour. Think about the last time you told someone close to you something that actually mattered. Chances are it took longer to work up to than it did with a stranger. Chances are you rehearsed it, softened it, waited for the right moment that never quite felt right. That's not caution. That's your nervous system correctly identifying that this person carries real stakes and incorrectly concluding that stakes are a reason to stay quiet instead of a reason that honesty would actually count for something. This is the part that mirrors your life right now tonight without any stranger or any flight required. The instinct that makes you tell a stranger everything and someone who loves you, almost nothing isn't broken, is just aimed at the wrong target. Every time you choose the anonymous comment section over the actual conversation, you're taking a skill you clearly have and spending it somewhere it can't accumulate into anything. Consider what Aaron's dinner guest question would look like if you actually asked it to someone in your own house tonight instead of a stranger on an app. Small, almost forgettable. Low enough stakes that a bad answer costs nothing. That's not a coincidence either. It's the exact on-ramp his research used to build real closeness in under an hour, sitting unused in your own kitchen. because it feels too small to matter, when smallness was the entire mechanism the whole time. The people who feel closest to the people around them aren't the ones who never open up to strangers. They're the ones who eventually took the exact same honesty they gave a stranger on a train and pointed it deliberately at someone who was actually going to stay. So the next time you catch yourself telling a stranger something you've never said out loud to anyone who matters, don't treat it as an accident or a lapse. Treat it as proof that the words exist fully formed, ready to be spoken. The only question left is whether you'll keep spending them on people who get off at the next stop or finally hand them to someone who won't.